Russia. We're joined now by Democratic Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard of Hawaii. She's a member of the Foreign Affairs and Armed Services Committee. She's also an Iraq War veteran. Congresswoman, thanks for joining us. The Director of National Intelligence, James Clapper, says he wouldn't rule out the possibility that ISIS shot down this airliner, to which you say...
It's a very real possibility that either ISIS or Al-Qaeda or one of these other Islamic extremist groups could be responsible for this horrible, horrible tragedy. I think it gives us pause to look at really the threat that Russia faces from Islamic extremism. I think we forget sometimes really how close Russia is and the former Soviet Union states to bordering these Middle Eastern states and the chaos that exists there. And we also see directly why Russia is so concerned about keeping Assad in power in Syria. They recognize directly that if Assad and the Syrian government of Assad is overthrown, then these Islamic extremist groups like ISIS and like Al-Qaeda will step in and will take over all of Syria, presenting a direct and existential threat to Russia.
Is it possible that these terrorists, these militants, could have gotten their hands on a surface-to-air missile, maybe a shoulder-fired missile, may not have the range to go up to 33,000 feet, but a surface-to-air missile to actually shoot this plane down?
I think we've got to look at all possibilities right now. There's a lot of changing dynamics that go on there, and unfortunately what we've seen, a lot of weapons are being co-opted by these Islamic extremist groups. And frankly, some of them, and I'm not making any assumptions about this situation, but we're seeing in other parts of Syria, for example, how some of the weapons that the U.S. has provided have gotten into the hands of these Islamic extremist groups. So the point is, the situation on the ground is changing. This investigation needs to be completed. We can't rule out the possibility of these Islamic extremist groups having targeted this aircraft, but we've got to see the results.
And we can't rule out the possibility that a bomb could have been placed inside that plane and blown it up along the lines of Pan Am 103 over Lockerbie.
That's exactly right. You know, you've had experts on here throughout the day talking about what all the different possibilities are. I think if we look at what's happening on the ground and we look at the investigation that's being conducted, it will become clear. But my point here is the threat that Russia sees directly from these Islamic extremist groups, directly as it relates to what's happening in Syria. And frankly, I think the United States needs to recognize the same situation that threat also poses to us.
One quick question, on this issue in Sinai. There are still about 750 American troops in Sinai right now. They've been there. They go in for about 6-month rotation every 6 months since 1979, the signing of the Israeli-Egyptian peace treaty. And this is a really dangerous area right now. We don't hear a lot about these Americans. We know 4 of them were severely injured back in September when they were the victim of an improvised explosive device. Are you concerned about the presence of these American troops in Sinai right now?
Well, I think if we look at Egypt, I think it's important that the United States maintain its support as Egypt continues to, I think, move in the right direction in trying to shut down these Islamic extremist groups within their own country. We've seen groups like ISIS take charge of certain territories within the Sinai and in other parts of the country there. So I think it's important that the United States continue to support Egypt as it takes this strong stand against these Islamic extremist groups.
It's a dangerous assignment they have. They're clearly the targets of these ISIS terrorists, Al-Qaeda terrorists, who are roaming around Sinai right now. Congresswoman, stay with us. We have more to discuss, much more with Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard when we come back. Certainly will be. All right, Barbara, thank you. Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard is still with us. You think, Congresswoman, it's a good idea to keep American troops on the ground in Syria, but you also say it's important to make clear exactly what their mission is. Do you understand what their mission is in Syria?
Wolf, that's exactly the point. I see a lack of clarity on what their mission is. First and foremost, we need to make sure that our troops, our resources are not doing anything to help these Islamic extremist groups further their goal to reach their objective of overthrowing the Syrian government of Assad. And unless and until the United States changes its position of conducting this illegal and counterproductive war to reach that end, to overthrow the Syrian government of Assad, then my concern of having U.S. troops on the ground there in Syria, providing weapons, providing support, My concern is that they will be directly or indirectly used towards that end to reach that same objective that the Islamic extremists are trying to accomplish in overthrowing the Syrian government of Assad.
As you know, a very small number of U.S. ground combat troops now for the first time being sent into Syria, less than 50, according to the Pentagon. But already, as you know, some are drawing comparisons between this initial small number of American troops going into Syria and the initial small number of troops that went into Vietnam, and that number grew and grew and grew. Do you have concerns about what's called mission creep?
Well, Wolf, what I'm concerned about is that people are clear about what's actually happening in Syria. There are two wars that are happening right now there. The first is the war that we should be focused on, the war against ISIS, Al-Qaeda, and these other Islamic extremist groups that attacked us on 9/11. Days after 9/11, Congress authorized this war to occur. And the other war is the civil war, where you have two sides, the opposition forces, whose most effective fighting forces on the ground are ISIS, Al-Qaeda, al-Nusra, and a whole slew of other Islamic extremist groups. And on the other side, you have the Syrian government of Assad that's trying to defend and stay in power. So my concern here is twofold with that second war, the civil war that's being conducted right now, is that it is a counterproductive and illegal war that the United States has taken a position in trying to overthrow this government. And second of all, it goes directly against our first and foremost mission, the mission that Congress authorized. Congress has not declared war against the Syrian government of Assad.
While I have you, Congresswoman, Reuters is now reporting that the U.S. Navy plans to conduct patrols in the South China Sea about twice a quarter, twice every 3 months or so. This following those comments made by China's naval commander that U.S. provocative acts, in their words, could potentially spark war. Do you support the continued U.S. naval presence in the South China Sea, areas, water that China claims are their territorial waters?
Well, the U.S. has been and continues to conduct these freedom of passage patrols in international waters all around the world, making sure that these passages are open for commerce for everyone. You know, the dangerous thing that I see about not only what China is trying to do and create these artificial islands is that it creates the potential for other countries to do the same. If you've got Vietnam creating these artificial islands essentially out of nothing, building them on top of reef, you can see how that could be a problem not only in the South China Sea, but around the world. It would create a whole new dynamic. So I think the critical thing here for us as the United States and the countries within the region, the ASEAN nations, is to find a consensus, to find a peaceful resolution to this that will ensure stability within the region, which I think ultimately is what all of these countries would like to achieve.
Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard, thanks very much for joining us.
Thanks, Wolf.